caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. And I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. And I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough. Oh, take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. Oh, I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I just want you. Nothing else. Oh, nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. Oh, nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Oh, nothing else. And nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. No, nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Oh, nothing else. Nothing else. Nothing else will do. I just want you. Nothing else. No, nothing else. Jesus, nothing else will do. I'm caught up in your presence. And I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessing, no. Hey, Jesus, you don't owe me anything, and more than anything that you can do, I just want you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just want to sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never want to leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Oh, Jesus, you don't owe me anything. And more than anything that you can do, I just want you. Anyway, I hope you guys had a great week. It was, I suppose, a great week. There's kind of a weird shift happening in my household.
Friday was awesome.
It was. Maybe it was awesome for you. I'm like, my oldest turned 16, and like these, a lot of these men, I think I invited every one of them, but a lot of them were there, and others who couldn't be there have shared a letter with my son. Just advice as he's going from childhood into adulthood, and in our culture and in our society, we don't really treat 16-year-olds as adults. Like we'll give them a 3,000-pound piece of steel and let them fly it down the road at 120 feet per second on the highway, but we don't really treat them as adults to an extent. But I think that's just kind of a cultural thing. And developmentally, when a kid hits about 15 or 16, as a parent, I don't know if any of you have ever had teenagers, you don't really control them. Maybe you can herd them and hopefully help direct them, but if they don't want to, you're not making them do anything. I remember myself when I was about 15, I homeschooled, and my mom would be like, do your schoolwork. And I said, or what? Like, or you're not going to hang out with your friends. I'm like, you mean at youth group? You're going to ban me from church? You don't have anything. And it wasn't good. It wasn't right. I'm not saying that at all. But it was definitely a shift where I'm like, like my parents can't actually make me do anything. Because I know I've actually made my kids, every one of them, brush their teeth. And when I say make, I mean like brush your teeth. Like, I'm not gonna. Well, guess what? You're 3 years old. You're not strong enough to stop me from making you. I would hold their hands with their toothbrush and brush their teeth for them. Like, I'm going to make you brush your teeth. I could do that. I can't do that to a 16-year-old. So I'm just saying this for you guys, for my benefit, for your benefit, for his benefit. If he says or does something that you're like, that's not right, you don't need to talk to me. Talk to him like you would talk to another adult. Like, hey, you said this and it offended me, or you said this and I think that was out of line. Like, yeah, speak to him as an adult now. But that was it's a good time, and it's a weird time, and I feel like I'm losing something, but it was neat. It's a neat time. I want my kids to step into life blessed. I want them to be greater than I ever will become. I think parents understand that. We want our kids to be better off than we ever were. But, yeah. So that took up a lot of emotional energy this week and was also kind of neat. And I want to share with you guys something with you guys today. That maybe it's because I love music so much. I feel like God just ministers to me through songs so often. I don't know if maybe it's just music, like reading about King David, a troubling spirit came on Saul, and David was just so anointed with his music and playing that when he played his music, the spirit would leave him in peace and let Saul just be. It would just push back that darkness from his mind and from his heart. And it seems like really good music. Music has the ability to do that. There have been so many times where I've just gotten a reminder from God in a song, like a song comes on. It's like, hey, I'm saying this to you today. And this is the strangest song to be moved by, but it's just this week. It just meant so much to me, and I want to share with you the lyrics to this song. The great poets David Hostetter, Lee Marie Hostetter, and Steve Wilson wrote this wonderful poem called "Oh Bravo." Says, I couldn't see beyond the corner of the stage from my place between the cowboy and the clown. Mommy dressed me up and left me with a kiss for the talent show now beginning, the curtain coming down. Just enough to hear them say, oh bravo, you're the best, there's no one else. Oh bravo, our applause is not enough. Can you hear us? Yell out, yell out. On and on and on and on we go. Bravo. One by one they came and left us all amazed. Everyone so elegant, it made me feel so plain. The clown so colorful, the ballerina danced and twirled, and I thought, clearly they're all better than my little song, and they deserve to hear the praise. Running off the stage with bitter tears of shame, close my eyes and try so hard to make it go away. I just want to go home and tell my teddy bear, I failed, I failed. I turned around the corner just to hear my daddy say, oh bravo, you're the best, you're my only one. Oh bravo, that will always be enough. Look at me. Your song was beautiful, beautiful. And even if nobody ever knows, bravo. A friend of mine this week said, whenever he's preaching, someone told him this a long time ago. He's like, I always remember it, and I'm always going to remember it. He said, my friend told me, ask, was it necessary for Christ to die for this message? We can learn a lot of stuff, but was it necessary for Christ to die for this? Yeah, it was necessary for Christ to die so that we can go from trying to please God and never succeeding, always trying and never able to live up to God's standard. That's where we exist. That's what we're born into. We're born into a place of trying to please God and never actually being able to, never actually being good enough. The world says, oh, bravo, you're the best, there's no one else. But their applause is never enough. It's never enough. We can never give enough. We can never give enough to be good enough. The moment you trip and stumble, if you do everything, the moment you stumble, everyone goes, ha, yes, I knew it, we were waiting for it. Or the moment you can try your hardest, do your best, the moment you sin, you know you're separated from God. You've lost that. It's split up. It's not enough. It's never enough. It's never good enough. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says, that God gave him who had no sin to be sin for us, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. We don't become good enough. We become the righteousness of God. When we run off the stage with bitter tears of shame, because we're just not good enough. We just didn't do it enough. Instead of being met with condemnation, because God gave his only begotten Son to be sin for us, instead of receiving condemnation, we turn the corner to hear our Father say, "You're the best. There's no one else." That will always be enough. That will always be enough. And even if nobody ever knows, even if nobody ever knows what you do, even if nobody ever knows the prayers that you pray by yourself in your room, even if nobody ever knows the tears that you cry in your car on your way to work over your family, even if nobody ever knows what you're giving, what you're putting in, even if nobody recognizes you, it'll never be enough anyway. My recognition, it would never be enough anyway. The world's applause, it will never be enough anyway, even if nobody ever knows. God says, "You're my righteousness." We become the righteousness of God. He says, "You've become my righteousness. You've become my treasure. You've become my heart." As the church, God compares the church to his bride. We're his bride. And when David was first met Eve and saw Eve, he said, "This is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh." That's what we become to God. Like we're inseparable. When we become the bride of Christ, when we become the righteousness of God by accepting what Jesus did on the cross, then we become bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. Then we become inseparable from God. What hurts us hurts him. What blesses us blesses him. And I want to tell you guys this morning, even if nobody ever knows, bravo. Your Father in heaven loves you. He's proud of us. He's proud of you. He's proud of me. Hebrews 12. Let me go here to Hebrews chapter 12. It says, "Since we're surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which so easily ensnares us, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest you become weary and discouraged in your souls. You have not yet resisted to bloodshed, striving against sin, like Jesus did." Consider him who endured such hostility from sinners against himself, lest we become weary and discouraged in our souls. That song meant so much to me because for me it was just God reminding me, like, I see you. I see your heart. We just talked about David. couple weeks ago. When Samuel went to anoint David, his dad didn't even think it was worth bringing him up. He wasn't even worth mentioning. He's like, bring all your sons out. He brings out his 7 sons, and God says, no. Everyone else looks at the outward appearance. Everyone else judges you from what they see. He says, I'm looking at the heart. I'm looking at the heart of people. And when you're praying, when we're praying, when we're seeking God, when we want to be used by God, when we want to be like, when we want our families to be coming to Christ, when we want to see God's Spirit moving, when we want to see healing happen, and we don't see it, it can get so discouraging. It can wear us down so much. But God says, even if nobody ever knows, bravo. Your song was beautiful. Your heart was beautiful, even if nobody ever knows. Consider Jesus, who endured such hostility from sinners against himself. When Jesus died, he basically had led 12 people to the Lord. He had a few disciples. When he ascended, his disciples gathered together. There's about 120 of them. The Son of God, God himself, the incarnate God, his impact on this earth was after his death, after his resurrection, and 400 people at one time saw him. His impact was 120 people were gathered together praying. Consider him. When you have a heart, when you're like, I want to see God move. I want to see God save my family. I want to see God save my neighborhood. I want to see God heal my wife. And you're praying, and it seems like nothing's happening. And you're like, what am I doing? What am I striving for? What am I begging God for? He says, consider Jesus, who did miracles for 3 years, who taught with authority for 3 years, who died on the cross. The temple veil was ripped in half and rose from the grave, then ascended into heaven, and 120 people were there like, yeah, let's roll with this. We want to be a part of this. Consider that. Because God doesn't want us to become weary or discouraged when we don't see the fruit that we want to see or that we expect to see. When He's going slow for us, letting everybody keep up. God's not slow as some understand slowness, Peter says. He's patient, not wanting anyone to perish, but everyone to come to the knowledge of Him. So He's being patient with us. He's being patient with us, waiting for our hearts, because God looks at the heart. From outward appearances, there's a lot of really pretty churches in America, but God's not looking at the outward appearance. He's not looking at the building. He's not looking at our clothes. He's not looking at our bank accounts. He's looking at our hearts. He's not looking at how great we are, how charismatic we are, how wonderful we are. He's looking at our hearts. And when He looks in our hearts and He can go, that's a heart I love. Then He says, look at me. Your song was beautiful. Even if nobody ever knows, even if nobody ever knows how hard you prayed. It matters to Him. And who are we doing this for? Are we doing this for us? In Galatians 1:10, Paul says, who am I doing this for? Am I doing this for man? If I was doing this for man, I wouldn't be a servant of Christ. What he says exactly is in English, for do I now persuade men or God? Or do I seek to please men? For if I still pleased men, I would not be a bondservant of Christ. So if your heart is to please man, I've got news for you. Their applause is not enough. It'll never be enough. Why would, if their applause was enough, if their accolades were enough, why would Tom Brady win 7 Super Bowls and then give up his marriage for one more mediocre football season? The applause just is never enough if that's what we're seeking, if that's what you're looking for. But if you want to know what God says to you, what God says is, your heart is beautiful. It matters to me, and that will always be enough. Your heart matters to God. The prayers you pray matter to Him. Your love for Him it'll always be enough that He loves you. It can always be enough if our heart's there, if that's what our heart wants. If what we want is, look, I want to make you happy, Dad, Abba, Father. One more verse here in Galatians 4. When the fullness, Galatians 4:4 through 7, says, when the fullness of the time had come, God sent forth His Son, born of a woman, born under the law, to redeem those who were under the law, that we might receive the adoption as sons. And because you are sons, all of us are sons. We're all bride. We're all the bride of Christ, and we're all sons of God. It's just our position. If you can understand this, God's not being gender specific. He's giving everyone the exact same privilege and exact same rights. We're all sons. God's only begotten Son is Jesus, and He's saying, you're my son to you. He's saying that to you. You get to inherit the same thing as my only begotten Son, Jesus. We get to be co-heirs with Christ, Romans says, if we share in His suffering. And because you are sons, God has sent forth the Spirit of His Son into your hearts, crying out, Abba, Father. Therefore you are no longer a slave, but a son, and if a son, then an heir of God through Christ. And so now God says to you, I want you guys to hear this. God says to us, you're the best. You're my only one. That will always be enough. Look at me. Your song was beautiful. Your prayer was beautiful. Your heart is beautiful. And even if nobody ever knows, bravo. It matters to Him. Your heart matters to God. Worship team could come up. I guess it's Teresa. Like Hebrews says, like we read, let us fix our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. I don't want to care about anyone else's applause. I just want to know that God's happy with me, that He's pleased with me, that He's blessed by my heart. If that's what matters to us, then how effective our ministry is doesn't matter. It's up to Him. Hudson Taylor, who started China Inland Mission, is said to have won a single convert to Christ in 40 years in China by his death. The only Chinese person that he led to Christ was his assistant. And within a generation of his death, there were something like 20 or 30 million Chinese Christians from his ministry. Can you imagine 40 years serving God, serving in the mission field for 40 years and winning one soul to Christ? I don't think I could do it. I would be so discouraged. 40 years of full-time ministry and one person coming to the Lord. But obviously, for him, it wasn't the applause that mattered. It wasn't what he saw that mattered. What mattered was the heart. What mattered was that he was pleasing God. What mattered was that he wanted to hear God say, "Oh, even if nobody ever knows, bravo. Well done, good and faithful servant." That was his goal. That's all he cared about. And he gave his life to win one convert, and then Christ used that to win probably hundreds of millions more since then. Hundreds of millions of souls now with Jesus, now in heaven, because he said, "I don't care about their applause. I want God to be pleased with my heart." And if your heart's that, don't be discouraged. Look at Jesus. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful men. And so that you don't become discouraged, so that you don't grow weary in doing good, so that you don't grow weary of praying for your families and seeing nothing happen. So you don't get weary of praying for healing and seeing nothing happen. So that you don't get weary of seeking Jesus with your whole heart and saying, "What's going on with this? Why am I doing this? Why am I contending for the faith? I don't see anything." God says, "Hey, I love you. That's enough. I hear your prayers. That's enough. Nobody else needs to hear them. I hear them and they matter to me, and that's enough." So let's consider who we suffer for, who we contend for. Is it for us? Is it for our benefit? Or is it because we're fixing our eyes on Jesus? I just want to let God speak over you this morning how much he loves you. He's a proud father. You know, releasing my son into the world is hard. He's not like I've gotten feedback from people here and there that like, your kid was doing this and was really out of line. Like, it'll happen sometimes. I've been that way. I'm that way sometimes. But as a father, you guys know, as parents, there's not a day goes by that you're not proud of your kids. They might do stupid stuff. They might screw up sometimes. But you're like, no, I know them. I know their heart. I love them, and I'm proud of them. God feels that way toward us. That's why he identifies himself to us as Father, just so that we can understand as parents. Like, when we have kids, we can go, God, I see your heart for me now. I can see how much you love me, how you're proud of me, even when I'm like, I'm not that proud of myself. God's like, no. You go, I didn't perform well at the talent show. He's like, hey, your song was beautiful. That's enough. I'm proud of you. That's enough. I love you. That's enough. So, let's pray. Than I am right now, wasn't holding you up, so there's nothing I can do to let you down. It doesn't take a trophy to make you proud. I'll never be more loved than I am right now. Jireh, you are enough. You are Jireh, you are enough. And I will be content in every circumstance. You are Jireh, you are enough. I'm going through the storm, but I won't go down. I hear your voice carried in the rhythm of the wind to call me out. Oh, you would cross an ocean so I wouldn't drown. Oh, you've never been closer than you are right now. You are Jireh, you are enough. You are Jireh, you are enough. And I will be content in every circumstance. You are Jireh, you are enough for me. Forever enough, oh, always enough. You are more than enough. Forever enough, always enough. You are more than enough for me. I'm already loved. I'm already chosen. I know who I am. I know what you've spoken. I'm already loved more than I could imagine. And that is enough. You are Jireh, you are enough. Jehovah Jireh, you are enough. And I will be content in every circumstance. You are Jireh, you are enough. You are enough. Oh, God is proud of you guys and loves you. Go live that out this week. Be blessed. We worship the God who was. We worship the God who is. We worship the God who evermore will be. He opened the prison doors. He parted the raging sea. My God, He holds the victory. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. And we won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. Yeah. We shout out your praise. We sing to the God who heals. We sing to the God who saves. We sing to the God who always makes a way. He hung upon that cross, then he rose up from that grave. My God, still rolling stones away. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We were the beggars, but now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. We were the beggars, now we're royalty. We were the prisoners, now we're running free. We are forgiven, accepted, redeemed by His grace. Let the house of the Lord sing praise. Come on. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. There's joy in the house of the Lord today. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. There's joy in the house of the Lord. Our God is surely in this place. We won't be quiet. We shout out your praise. We shout out your praise.